This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
You are listening to the latest edition of Two Bad Hombres, and this week's episode is brought to you by DC Sports at Lakeside Mall in Sterling Heights. You can follow DC Sports on Twitter at DC Sports Detroit and check out their fine website at DetroitCitySports.com for all their latest autograph signing sessions, including 2 of them coming up that you must be in attendance for, including on June 15th, next weekend that would be with Chase Winovich, the Michigan football icon and New England Patriots third-round draft pick, signing autographs at DC Sports. And following that, to wrap up the month of June, is a signing in which Sweet Lou Whitaker, will be featured. For all of that and more, once again, check out DC Sports' terrific website at DetroitCitySports.com.
I was trying to get it out here. I want them dead presidents. I want to pull up, head spin, get it, get fly. I got 6 jobs, I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. I don't get tired. Get it, get fly.
And we are still not tired on this week's episode of Two Bad Hombres. I am your host, Vito Geronimo Churko, alongside my usual sidekick and broadcast partner in fun, that is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon. John, how are you doing?
Vito, welcome to the weekend. Looking forward to this podcast recording. We got a special in-studio guest this week. Who we got?
Jason Colthorp of WDIV Channel 4 in Detroit. Jason, how are you doing?
2 very bad hombres. Believe me, they're very bad guys. But forget about that. They're very great, very strong. It's good to
I
be
love that
here.
impersonation of Donald J. Trump. Very top-notch.
It's my hidden talent. I was going to get to that later probably, but when you said 2 bad hombres, it just clicked right in my head. I end up doing that in the newsroom a lot whenever something comes up with Trump, and I try and keep it because, it's a mixed newsroom, so people have different beliefs about different things. So I always try and keep it. I did one on my my Facebook a couple years ago when I was here, and I was out reporting, and I don't know why it just clicked, but we were at Big B Coffee, and I just went into this whole thing, and I just went, whenever I'm out getting coffee, and believe me, I love coffee. It's very good. I go to the Bigley Coffee. It's very Bigley. It's very strong. Tremendous people. I love the Bigley people. Very great people. Wonderful people. I love these people. But forget about that. It's made in America, not in China. It's not hacked by the Russians. It's very good coffee, believe me. I know a lot of coffee makers.
How he says Bigley. I mean, nobody even knew that was a word before he started using it, right? But it actually is in the dictionary, so we know that.
Oh,
in
it's
China,
huge.
the way in which he says China, and it is huge. China. That is something, isn't it? It really is.
Jason,
John?
I'll ask you this, and I'm going to enjoy this conversation. I want to get to know Jason. The way in which I came in contact with him is similar to a lot of the guests. Obviously we're on Twitter quite a bit, you and I, and all of a sudden, someone started chiming in, and it's Jason. I look up everyone's profile, and I'm like, his profile bio was very interesting, so I'm thankful that when we met him at the USPBL Media Day, that he said, that's the guy that's been, messaging back and forth a little bit, a fellow Spartan, so that's always a good thing.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah. I feel comfortable already, but I do want to ask, because you brought it up, the newsroom is mixed. What's been how's been your reaction to kind of talking politics with your colleagues? Has it been okay? Do you guys feel like it's comfortable to have those kind of discussions, especially in a work environment?
It can get, when we are in our meetings talking about what we're going to cover. We had one recently, and we were talking about all the so there's so many people running for the Democratic nomination for president. This is endless. It's in the 20s. And we were talking about, are we going to do a story every time somebody comes to town? And I kind of brought up, and I said, I'm just saying, for the viewer out there who's a hardcore Republican, aren't they going to say every time they see this, there goes the left-wing mainstream media, fake news, whatever, again, just covering their candidates? And we had this good discussion. It kind of set off a good discussion. No, because I think somebody had a great viewpoint. It's good to educate everyone on every candidate. And it's just difficult to balance it sometimes. But I think in this culture, I go into this all the time, and I tell people, as journalists, it's important more now than ever to remember that it's our job to gather the news, not steer it one way or another. We're not analysts. We're not writing editorials. We're writing stories, and we're just presenting the facts for people to decide. And I think too often people lump the entire media in when they say, oh, it's fake news, it's mainstream. they throw them, and you guys can probably relate to this. They just say media all as one thing. And I'd say, I challenge them to say, which media? Are you reading some blog, far left blog or far right blog? That's not all media. That's not us. The local news is completely different than so many different things. We're different than podcasting. We're different than a blogger, network news even. So, I mean, we do have those good discussions, but in the end, I think we do a great job of making sure we have true professionals there. That's the key.
And then how important is it to give both sides of the argument?
Very, but sometimes there isn't two sides. I was sometimes there's four sides. Sometimes there's one side. You don't go to the KKK rally and let them tell you what their viewpoint is. We know what it is, and we're not going to give them the airtime kind of thing. But it's very important. I mean, you do have to go the extra mile to make sure it's not so much about both sides sometimes as it is about being fair. You want to make sure everybody has a fair say, and you can't be too beholden. I've learned this a couple times here. Rod Maloney has been a good mentor of mine, and he'll say, I watched your story, and he goes, I think you were a little beholden to your source there, the source who you get a story from, or you run with it, and maybe you lean a little bit more toward their side of the story, or you give them maybe more say before you go get the rebuttal, and sometimes the rebuttal is totally different.
So, Jason, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and tell us about your ties here locally.
Well, I was born in Lansing a long time ago. I grew up in St. John. Well, I grew up in DeWitt for a couple of years, and then my mom moved us to Florida in fourth grade. So I grew up in Anna Maria Island through high school.
Nicer than here.
It's a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit better weather. And then I would spend summers up here with my dad. My dad's in mid-Michigan, and I grew up he ran golf courses for a guy, so I grew up on a golf course usually, and then the restaurant business. My family's in the restaurant business. And then after high school, I came back, wanted to come back to Michigan, just wanted to get out of Florida. Everybody goes, why? Looking back, I have no idea why, but I did. Went to Michigan State, Ferris State for a couple of years, and then Michigan State for a couple more, and finished out. And I always wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That was my goal, because I did it in high school, and they gave me free reign. Once I was a junior in high school, I knew I wanted to be on SportsCenter. That was my goal for the longest time. And finally, I broke through. Actually, I had some trouble after I graduated. It took a couple of years before I could get a job in TV, and the job in between was for the Lansing Lugnuts. I was the stadium MC, which, believe it or not, really helps when you get up in front of 10,000 fans every night and hey, everybody, it's time to play Go Nuts for Donuts. Our contestant tonight is John Eversay. Yo, John. All right, John, here's what we're going to do. Play a song, and then we're going to stop it. And if you get it right and you sing the next line, you're going to get 24 donuts from Quality Dairy. All right, here we go. You're ready to play. So I do that every night. And I did that for 2 years, and then finally got a job at WILX in Lansing as the third sports guy. Did that for 2 years. And had a great mentor there in Ben Holden, who is familiar down here as CBS Sports play-by-play guy. He does TV, and he's done some radio for DFN back in the day, and he's a great friend of mine. And by the second year, I was thinking, all right, I was married then. I'm thinking maybe I can look for another job, maybe go to another market. But before that happened, randomly, I filled in on a weekend morning newscast because they were out of people. And it was just the truth. Everybody's out of town, gone. They asked me to do it. And I thought, well, I guess that'd be fun. So I jumped in, did it. And that led to one more. And the next thing you know, they're offering me the weekday morning news anchor job, which I took. And that led to an evening anchor job. And I ended up staying there 15 years. And I was the everyday anchor before I left to come to Channel 4 in 2015. So I've been here 4.5 years. And then I've been here reporting, and then I started anchoring the 5:30 news with Karen Drew every day.
So I think it was interesting, too, seeing your Twitter bio and what you put on there, that you've been a wedding DJ, minor league baseball stadium MC for the Lansing Lugnuts then. I mean, how did those experiences help you out as well?
It really takes the fear out of everything. I try to explain this to younger reporters. You can see the fear in their eyes sometimes, and they're very cautious. And I always say you just have to do something that gives you that sense of finally jumping out of the plane and just going for it. And for me, that was the wedding DJ part was good. It's a big crowd. It's their biggest day of their lives. So you have to be on your game. And I was always I had a good mentor in that regard as well. And that always went very well. And I would get a lot of laughs, and we had a few things. But as long as you had to learn, what I learned there is, you don't always have to be the center of attention when you're running things. Just get out of the way and let things go. Just kind of steer it. And then when I worked for the Lugnuts, So many people up there. I just remember my heart beating out of my chest the very first game that I worked, the very first inning. And as soon as they got the third out, I knew I had to get up on the dugout. And I was just so scared. And I kept thinking, have a big inning. Just score 8 runs. I can't do this yet. And at some point, the lady looks over at me and she goes, I'm so nervous. And I went, you're nervous? I'm the one who has to do all the talking.
Oh, my God.
So I got up there and I said, hey, Lucknut fans, how you doing tonight? And there was like this beat. And all of a sudden, some guy in the back just stands up and goes, yeah! And I was like, yeah! And from then on, I really lost all nervousness. It was just breaking that barrier to be able to do what I do.
What are some of your early sports memories and why you chose sports potentially to become an early broadcaster?
My earliest sports memories were, I would think about this all the time. I remember my first NFL memory was the Dolphins-Chargers double overtime playoff game. I don't know why that's in my memory, that one. Basketball, I can't remember what, I think it would be, I don't remember the 79 championship game, but my parents were both big sports fans, both big Michigan State fans. My dad's a super sports fan and I just remember growing up and in the summertime, we'd spend the summers with my dad, and it's funny, I look at the wall and I see the old Free Press pages that you have up, and he would get the Free Press and the news every day. And I was the kid who went through and just soaked up the stats. I would always go through and pray that this was the day they put the league batting averages in the paper. Way before the internet, and I'm thinking, oh, yes, stats. Who's leading the league in doubles? Who's leading the league in triples? Whitaker's on there. I knew he would be, yes. And I memorized just because I loved it so much, I collected baseball cards, and I memorized all the home run totals from all the great home run hitters. And still, somebody will say Ted Williams, I'm like 521. And William A. 660. And the numbers just still stick with me. But I grew up loving baseball, and we played soccer and basketball and just played a lot of sports. And it just was my thing. I loved it. And I love sports trivia.
You brought up Lou Whitaker now. Does Sweet Lou belong in the Hall of Fame? That's been a discussion for many years now among Detroit sports fans.
No question. I just somebody tweeted out of the blue some Hall of Fame thing saying, should Lou be in? And they gave some good stats. Just look at the stats. Like people say Joe Morgan is the best second baseman of all time. Look at Lou Whitaker's stats. Hold them side by side. They're very comparable. And Lou's better than Joe Morgan in a few things. But because he was part of the Big Red Machine, I think it launches him so much higher. But let's not forget he was part of the best double play combination of all time, arguably. But I mean, Tiger fans would believe they're the best. 20 years together. And
the longest double play tandem in Major League Baseball history as well, Jason, as you know. So
I loved Lou Whitaker. He signed my card in spring training one year. I'm a little, obviously we're partial being Detroit fans, but if you look at the numbers, I thought Morris belonged in. I think Whitaker belongs in. And I think Trammell belongs in too.
Mm-hmm.
He was always, you take away the shadow of Cal Ripken in the 80s is he should have won the MVP in 87, got robbed by George Bell. And he was a World Series MVP in 84. And another guy who played for an incredibly long time. But I don't have Trammell's stats in front of me. So.
And I'll bet your career, what are the differences and similarities between covering sports and then news reporting?
It took me a while to get this because in sports, I was having so much fun. You're like, oh, man, I'm going to Michigan State's basketball practice. I love these guys. I love Izzo. And, I would go cover these guys and tell a story. And it was fun putting a story together like about Jason Richardson's rise to the way he's playing this year. He's come out of nowhere. I still remember putting that together and using that sound. And that was fun. And then I switched to news and I'm thinking, I don't even watch the news. When I first jumped into the news part of it, I didn't watch it. I watched sports, only sports, our competition sports, ESPN, that sort of thing. And then putting a story together, I had to learn you're really more storytelling. There's a lot more subtlety to it. And it's not about just getting a police officer to tell me the facts and that's the soundbite. That's not what you want. It took me a while to realize you're trying to capture the human emotion of stories and you want to get people's emotion about. A lot of times we say this at Local 4. These are big moments, life-changing moments. Whenever you're out covering a story almost every day, that story you're doing is a life-changing moment for someone. So you should be able to get their emotion on it and be able to tell a good story that isn't just, your voice, soundbite, your voice, soundbite, your voice, soundbite. It should be able to weave a whole different tale with a lot of elements to it.
So make it interesting. Yeah. Use unique angles. You have to captivate the audience, right? Yeah. And tell a story. And then in your Twitter bio, I saw that you did put that. storyteller at Local 4 News. So it really comes down to telling great stories about these individuals.
I take so much pride when we're able to interview someone or find out what someone's story is, or find out, maybe it's a controversy, maybe it's a story, it could be a million different things. Maybe it's just a bar that's been in Monroe for 100 years next to this railroad track, and it's what's the story behind it? The owners met there. He bought it after delivering to it for years and years, and then his wife came in and was in the pool league. They met, and now they run it together, and you just weave in these different ways to be able to let them tell this story that probably a lot of people don't know. Not to mention we have photographers who are incredibly talented at Channel 4 who are able to do so many different things with different cameras now and microphones, and we use different angles. I remember that story I just happened to be referencing, the Sidetrack Saloon in Monroe. We used this, we superimposed me sitting at the bar, not superimposed, we just shot it this way. I was sitting there. And then you see me walk in as a new patron in the same shot and sit down and say hi to myself. Hey, how you doing? Kind of thing. So we try and do a lot of different creative things to be able to tell that story and just make it memorable. A long time ago, when I was still in sports, I did a story on a female golfer who was playing in the U.S. Open. At the time, she was the only woman to play in the U.S. Open tennis tournament and golf tournament other than Althea Gibson. And her name was Karen. Oh, I would think of it if I give me a minute. But I remember thinking, we were just out on the golf course. I looked at my photographer and I said, how are we going to make this story better? What can we do that tomorrow somebody goes, did you see that story on Channel 10 last night? Wow. So I always still remember that. I'll think, what can we do to make somebody say, did you see that story on Channel 4 yesterday? Wow. And in that case, I asked her if she knew any trick shots, and we set it up where I was holding a ball out of my mouth and she hits it out of my mouth. Really? Trick photography. She didn't really do it, but she played along and it was really great and people remembered it. So
how much do you look at the competition, Channel 7, Channel 2, and what they're doing, and try to be different than those guys?
I don't think we look at it to be different. I don't look very much at all. And even at the beginning, even when I came here, I was nervous about doing the same story when I knew both other stations were doing it. And sometimes I would check to see how they did it. What did they get? Because sometimes I was nervous. Maybe I didn't cover everything I needed to. I was still pretty nervous at the beginning. But then not long after, I was just very confident in the way I told the story. And I didn't check. I didn't look. But when we're sitting in the newsroom, sometimes I should shorten it and just say, it's not my job to watch them, but we do watch them. The same way they have people that watch what we're doing.
So you still pay attention at the end of the day. And when you're on the scene covering a story, what is it like being out there, a day in the life of a news reporter, Jason?
Well, it's fun. Every day's different. And you get out there and you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know who you're going to talk to. You don't know what kind of sound bites you're going to get. It depends on what the story is. And if you're human, every story affects you differently. I mean, in Detroit, let's not, mince words. There are a lot of tough stories to cover, a lot of shootings. A lot of times it ends in death. And a lot of times you're on a scene where it's someone's worst day of their life. And you not always, I just know that I go to each story and think about, how do I want to cover this respectfully? And the tough thing is sometimes everybody's there. You have to be mindful. You don't want to come back to the station and get questioned as to, hey, why didn't they have this? Well, why didn't you get this one? And sometimes it's, you want to make sure that you're going to be able to sleep at night. You're not going to jam a microphone in somebody's face who's just lost somebody. I've never done that, and I never will. And I'm not saying other people do, but every story is different. You get out to those scenes, and then hopefully it's a better story where it's breaking news, something's happening, and there's a rush to be able to do things quickly and get it on the air quickly, and you just get a nice story cut real quick, and it's good, and you're able to translate it to the audience. And if you can do that a lot more clearly than I'm doing it here, if you can do that, then it just gives you so much pride to be able to know that you did a good job.
So how tough are those stories to cover and to convey at times when there is death involved? How tough is that for you as a news reporter?
It just depends sometimes. Sometimes some affect you more than others. I mean, when you've been doing it a long time, I've been in this business for 19 years now, in the news side, 17 years. And I remember when I had kids and I would cover stories about kids, or just even if I was anchoring and we'd talk about kids' tragedy with them. it took a while to get used to be able to do that, to even talk about it. But then times, I don't want to say you get hardened to it, but you just get a little bit used to it. But still, nowadays, we see so many stories in Detroit that are just unbelievable. I mean, every day starts with are you kidding me? It's just, how could this happen? And it did. And it's really not fake when you see a reporter sign off and send it back, and the anchor says, I can't believe that. That's just awful. Or our hearts go out to them. Hearts really do go out to them. And you don't want to say it every time, but it's really tough sometimes to separate it from real life.
And now you brought up anchoring. How about the differences between anchoring and then being on the scene in the field?
Anchoring, it feels like you just have to, you're almost like a traffic cop sometimes, a little bit, but you want to feel a little bit more invested in those stories. So it's a little, but when you're out in the field, I always look at it this way. When I'm out in the field, I don't know anything that's going on in the news. When I'm anchoring, I know everything that's happened because we're covering the show. But when you're out there, I'm focused on my story. My earpiece is in. The anchor tosses to me. I say something, or I do my story, and then toss back, and then it's out, and then you go, all right, I think we did a good job with that, And then you get back to the station, and what else was going on? What happened today? Because so much happens that you're not paying attention because you're so focused on your story out in the field. But on the desk, you're able to follow along, and it was a tough thing. I tell you what, I learned so much from Devin Scillian every day. That guy is just unbelievable with his insight into every story. He can relate to every story there is, no matter what it is. He's a great sports fan. He has this, he's a musician, an author. The guy is so well-rounded, he's not real. My contention is he's fake. He's a fake. He's not a real person, probably from another planet, because he just knows too much about everything. And no matter what story, they always say this little thing like anchor reacts is always in the teleprompter. And I'm always nervous about that because I kind of shoot from the hip and I don't know what's coming out of my mouth. And I'm worried, I don't know if I want to say anything here. Like, wow, why would they do that? Devin always has the perfect thing to say, and I'll watch. I'm like, yes, that was the perfect little way to tie up a story and move on to the next thing. Smooth transitions. So I'm always trying to improve with that. And in my situation too, the biggest difference is when you're anchoring, you're interacting with everybody else. You're a co-anchor. You're Bernie coming in to do sports. You got Ben doing weather. So you just have a lot of different moving parts that you want to try and mesh with. When it's out doing a story, you're just worried about you having a nice relationship with your photographer and putting a story together, and you don't have to worry about much.
Now, you're a longtime journalist. Early on, what were your goals when you first got into the field of journalism? And now, being that you're an established veteran, what are they now?
Yeah, they've changed a little bit. The easy answer is when I first started, my goal is to be a SportsCenter anchor. I had all these catchphrases, had little things, and I always was waiting to use them in sports, and I never got to because I never got to anchor sports because I became a news anchor from the number 3 spot in Lansing, so I was really never ever the anchor part. So I never got to use the little one. I can't remember what I had, but I'm trying to think.
No catchphrases right now that you can tell us?
I think what was the one, if anytime anybody hit it to the Gap, I'd go, he's going shopping at the Gap. It was lame, but that's
but it was
the one.
something at least. So
I had a couple, and I used to try and remember what they were, but I get to do sports at Channel 4 every now and then. You probably haven't seen it, but when everybody's off, when Jamie's off and Bernie's off, sometimes if I'm working, they just have me do sports while I'm anchoring. And sometimes actually am there just to do sports, which is fun because then we can have a little fun. And I remember I did one time and there was a golf tournament and JJ Walker was leading. We threw some highlights and I said, let's intercut this with JJ Walker from Good Times, just doing dynamite in between each one. So he'd make a putt. Then I go, JJ Walker for birdie. And well, dynamite. We come back, we just had fun with that. But so after I switched to the news side, my dream became to anchor the Today Show, to be a morning show anchor on the Today Show. And I still have always had that dream. I've always felt like with my personality, I'd be a little bit more comfortable on a morning show and just be able to cut it loose a little bit, there's a little bit more time to show your personality. And I still, although now that I've seen what I've seen with network anchors, and they shuffle around and what they do. It's not so much about having a dream to do that job. It's more about just trying to be the best I can be wherever I am. And at Channel 4, I really am very happy with the situation I'm in. And whatever they want to do, it's just great. So you never say never about where you might end up, but I really like where I'm at.
And current goals, what are they now?
Honestly, it sounds maybe a little canned, but it's just to get better and better, to be the best I can be. And I feel like I have so much to get better at. And every day I'll think, I could have done that so much better. So I'm working with people like Karen, who's been here 20 years, and Devin, who's been here 25 years, and Kim Gill, who's just amazing. And so I look around, and these guys are the best of the best. So I'm just I'm in the deep end. And I feel like when I first came to Detroit, I would tell people it was like playing for the Lugnuts. Now all of a sudden I got called up to the Tigers, and I'm in the lineup. And now I feel like I'm definitely, maybe I've moved up to maybe the second hitting position or something like that. And now I just feel a little more pressure to make sure I'm getting hits and batting 300. So I'm surrounded by all-stars. I just want to get to the all-star level myself.
Would you still like to do sports on a local or national level one day? I know you love sports.
People ask me that all the time. They're like, well, I think they get it wrong. Sometimes they're like, when's Bernie going to retire? Are you going to take over for him? I'm like, well, that's not what I'm in news, but I would never close any door to something like that, because it's still, I've always had that goal. But once I got out of it, I remember enjoying things a lot more, because once the game gets over now, I can just keep drinking. And I don't,
more fun.
I don't have to go to work. Yeah, you're covering a game. The game gets over. Now you got to get to the locker room. Now you got to cover everything. But I still do miss that rush of covering a game. Somebody yesterday, we were talking about, we were short a camera, and I jokingly said, give me one of the cameras, I'll go. And they said, you can shoot, right? And I said, yeah. I said, I'm always working to catch my next greatest shot. The first greatest shot I had was David Terrell diving catch at Michigan, one of my first days on the job. And then one of my last days, well, it wasn't last, but I got a great shot of Smoker to Duckett in the end zone, that pass. I got the ball perfectly, and I was standing right behind Duckett. If you watch that highlight, when they all start piling on, you'll see me standing right over the pile with the camera and just kind of holding it out like that. So, and then just the walking off the field on that one, just those types of games where it's a moment and you're covering it, which is another interesting story that I had. When I was first here, it felt like I was always working the day of a big game. So Michigan State at Michigan, Harbaugh's first game. I'm down there covering it, and I'm not able to watch any of the game. We're live at 6, and we are going around town, just talking to people, just trying to do a story on, what do you think? Well, actually, we did get to watch a lot of the fourth quarter. We're over at the golf course, interviewing people over there. And I said, we'll get this. And then when people are coming out of the game, we'll get reaction when they come out. And we're watching over there on a couple of people who are still over there with TVs. And it becomes clear Michigan's going to win. And I'm like, all right, let's just go up to the gates, and we'll get everybody coming out and blah, blah, blah. And so people start rolling out of there. They're like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, I can't remember what I asked some guy. And I just remember this one guy going, yeah, the Harbaugh train, baby, we're on. Woo, woo. And these other Spartan fans come out, and they're like, well, we'll get them next year. And, it was we weren't supposed to win, and we hung in there. And I was like, all right, yeah. And I'm like, okay, this is good. And I'm waiting, and then all of a sudden there was a weird hush. All of a sudden, and I'm standing outside the stadium. I don't know what's going on inside. All of a sudden there's a silence, and there's a weird cheer, like a strange cheer. It was like a big cheer, and then it went silent, and then there's like a small cheer. And I'm like, what's going on? And I look at my cameraman, Jake, and I was like, and these people are running. There's like a group of people running out and in green. And I just remember in green, and they're shouting, and I'm like, something happened. And so there was a TV like through this glass I could see, and I go running over, and I look in the window, and I just see everybody in the end zone on top of each other. And I go, Michigan State won the game. I don't know what happened, but Michigan State won the game. What? And camera guy goes, what? What? I said, I don't know. But then we started interviewing people coming out.
How was it to interview
Oh, my
those
God.
Michigan fans coming out of the big house?
I can't tell you how many times I heard, all you have to do is punt the damn ball.
It came down to that punting of all things.
Catch the ball.
I know.
It's like, and I'm like, oh boy, it sounded like something happened on the punt. And I didn't know what happened. It
And I was
the weirdest
there.
thing.
I was there in the press box. The big house went dead silent. Now, do you remember where you were, John, too, for that
Oh,
game?
of
I know
course.
you still do. Every Sparty fan, I think, remembers, and Michigan fan, unfortunately, too, at this point.
Yeah, I'll never forget it because I was one of the rare Spartans in the house. I watched it with my family, and it was one of those games where Michigan just had the lead, and Michigan State wasn't doing a whole heck of a lot, not many, marquee plays and things like that. And all of a sudden, you have this punt, and I spun like a top, and I screamed the loudest I've ever screamed because everyone was shocked, jaw open. I'm like, wait a minute, they won the game! They won the game! And I was screaming, and it was a memory for the ages. And when you're a Spartan fan and you're a supporter, Michigan's your biggest rival. And when you can win like that,
That's
to shock
unreal.
everybody, and then to see the visuals of all the Michigan fans being shocked and just unbelievably, kind of processing what just happened. Greatest memory being a Michigan State supporter outside of winning championships.
I wish I could have seen it live.
And to beat your rival on the road. You almost
Yeah.
saw it live. Now, how about when you're shooting something live or just shooting something? How is that? How is that different from actually reporting or anchoring?
It's tough. It's tough. And I really don't shoot anything anymore. But when I was shooting sports, I would shoot a lot of sports, a lot of games. And if I was covering Michigan State, obviously, or even, Tigers, Lions, whatever, I'm a Detroit fan too. And it would be, but I got to a point where I almost became a non-fan. I really got into that role. I could sit in the press box of an MSU football game, basketball game, and there was no chance of me cheering or anything like that because that's frowned upon in the press box, obviously. But even if it was a big game, if they won, I'd feel good. If they lost, that's a bummer. And shooting video, I just got so consumed in making sure I was doing a good job. You're worried about getting the ISOs or getting the play. It's easy to fall into doing the job after a while, I found out.
So how about, though, taking the fandom out and the bias out? You said it's easy after a while, but when you first started, how tough was that?
Well, it's tough to, like I said, I remember covering Michigan State winning its fourth straight Big Ten title. That would have been 2001. So I was still about 6 months on the job, 7, 8 months, something like that. And I remember Breslin Center was jam-packed, and we're trying to get from one side over to the stage. And I would come across people. I remember seeing David Thomas doing this, and I'm like, yeah, DT, all right. So I was kind of cheering with them, But then, and it also wasn't that hard to remember that you're a journalist there to cover something, because I remember interviewing Jason Richardson on the stage, and he said, I can't remember what he said, that he said something alluding to the fact that about next year. Next year we're going to do this, and I said, so is that to say you're coming back? He goes, oh yeah, I'm coming back, Michigan State. I'm telling you right now, I'm coming back to Michigan State. We played that a lot after he decided to go pro.
So what are some tips you have for aspiring reporters and young journalists out there today?
Internships. Internships are the biggest. I didn't get a chance to do many, so I kind of got pretty lucky. I'm really, really lucky to be where I am. I didn't quite do it the traditional way of getting the only internship I had I had two. I had one that I was a producer of a sports talk show, and I was also the rink reporter for MSU hockey. So I got those, and they were helpful, but they didn't really add to my tape when I went to get a job, and they want a videotape, or they wanted to see what you have done. And I didn't have a whole lot, so it didn't help in that regard. But I would always say, as soon as you can find an internship or somewhere where they'll let you do anything, you need to do that. And you want to see if this is what you want to do. And today, you need to be versatile. I mean, the versatility. I mean, you can't just be a TV personality anymore. You can't just be a talking head, and maybe you can run the camera too. You need to be able to master the web and master social media and master a lot of different things. Maybe podcasting or a lot of different facets. Whatever skills you have, if you have 10 skills, they're going to hire you over the guy who has 5 skills.
And it seems like you have to shoot a lot of your own stuff nowadays too. That's what I hear in this industry. Is that true as well, Jason?
It's really going that way. I mean, we don't have the Detroit market's a little different, but a lot of markets around the country, we have what are called VJs, video journalists, and they are the reporters that shoot it themselves. And it's something you have to. And a lot of times, there are so many females in this market or in this business. You go to other markets, you'll see women carrying the gear around, the camera, the sticks, and everything like that. And a lot of them will get out because it's just like or they want to get to a market where they're working with a photographer. But in Detroit, it's a little bit different. And well, to finish that thought, that's how everybody gets good. And I know I have some close friends still in Lansing who still do that. And it helps them with an eye of how to tell the story. If you've kind of come up being the photographer, you can kind of work with your photographer down the line and say, I'm thinking, do you see what I see? You collaborate a little bit and you can work together to get the shot that you want.
And you were saying you can't just be a talking head nowadays, but I want to be talking heads right now. And regarding Michigan hoops and the hiring of Juwan Howard, let's transition to sports talk a little bit here and get your opinions. And first on that matter, what do you think of the hire of Juwan Howard?
My initial thought was, I didn't think it was good for him. I just the no head coaching experience, but that's changed, and I'll explain. I took some heat in the newsroom one day because I was at the gym when they introduced him. And I had no sound. Now, keep in mind, I had no sound, but he walks up to the stage and I just see him start crying and turn around and start crying. And I kind of started laughing and I thought, what's going on? What is he doing? But when I watched it late and I came to the newsroom and I said to one of my buddies who's a Michigan fan, and he got mad. He's like, how could you say that? The way he was talking about his grandma, I'm like, okay. I'm just telling you, all I saw was the beginning. And then I went and watched what he said, and I was very impressed with what he said. And so my feeling has changed in two ways. I think this is a guy who's going to be able to go on the recruiting trail and sit in somebody's living room and really going to have an impact. I mean, if Juwan Howard was recruiting my kid and spoke the way he speaks, I would really, it would be tough to say no to him. And then I saw he hired Phil Martelli.
That's huge.
I think that's big because you don't know, it's great to be a good recruiter, but what system do you have? You have to have something to run. And you really don't know what he did in Miami. I don't know if he was the offensive guy or whatever. I know he was a great player. And we've seen other great former players be able to coach at the college level, or I guess good and bad. I mean, Kevin Ollie won a national title with UConn, but then he got fired.
Yes.
So it's tough to tell how that ends up shaking out. But after letting it all settle and seeing who he's hired, I think he's going to do fine, but I don't think he's going to be as good as John Beilein.
The funny part about those that reacted that way to Juwan Howard, sometimes as hard as you work in life, there is a luck factor. And Juwan Howard, when you look at it, the way in which he's hired is super lucky as well because of the fact that the timing of when John Beilein left, you look at it and you say some of the other candidates are locked into their jobs. So now you have this opportunity, you're Juwan Howard, to go back to the place that you love. How can you not be emotional? Because I do believe that's his dream job. And I could relate to that knowing that, here as a podcast, we had limitations and things that, kind of hindered us a little bit. But then as we worked hard, as we, started making goals and achieving them, when Vito and I got the email that said, hey, you guys can cover the Tigers, we were like jumping up and down going, wow, this is unbelievable, because it was inconceivable 6 years ago that two guys that started a podcast in a basement could eventually go and cover the Detroit Tigers. So I could understand that and relate to that, but in sports, it's like, why is he crying up there? And that was your initial reaction, so I always found that to be funny.
Once I heard his comments, then it all made sense. When I was able to, and I even went back to the guys in the newsroom, the Michigan fans, and I said, all right, I'm sorry, you're right. That was very heartfelt, and as soon as he said something, I felt bad for even kind of thinking that was funny. And they all looked at me, they're like, yeah, see? And I was like, you're right, okay.
What's your honest take on Jim Harbaugh? Is this the year that he has to produce something tangible like a Big Ten title? Because it's been 4 years. The Michigan natives are getting restless, especially with the expectation and what's been delivered. Consistent losses to Ohio State, not winning Big Ten, not getting to Indy. I think this is the biggest year for Jim Harbaugh. I think the seat might be the hottest it's ever been.
Yeah, but do you really think they would ever push him out?
That's the question.
I don't think so. He's his own boss, it seems like. Ward Manuel isn't going to fire him. I think Jim Harbaugh will leave before Ward Manuel or anybody ever fires him.
I think he would have to have a lot of bad years.
Yeah, I agree.
mean, just like, and I think he could hang on and beat Michigan State every other year and never beat Ohio State and never win the Big Ten and still go 10-2, 9-2, 9-3, and probably survive for a long time, even though everybody would be like,
what's going on?
Enough. Yeah.
So, I mean, what does that do, though, for his legacy? I mean,
Oh, yeah,
if
it
you care
tarnishes
about
it.
that. It tarnishes it big time, right? If you can't beat Ohio State at least a couple of times every 5 years.
It already
right?
has.
And
right?
it's already
I mean,
been.
What's his record
It's going
against?
to be his 5th year, 0-4, going into year number 5 on the job.
for
as head
Ohio
man
State.
Against
and
Ohio State.
He's beaten Michigan State once or twice.
I don't think he's beaten Ohio State at all.
Well, no,
He
he
hasn't
hasn't.
beaten
No,
Ohio
0-4
State.
against Ohio State. Against State, though.
And State once or twice.
2 wins.
Yeah.
2 wins.
Yeah.
I think. That's it.
2 wins, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he against Notre Dame, he's 0-2 or
Just lost this past
Oh,
year
no.
and lost
0-2.
another game at least one time this past year, the opening game, which
Yeah.
it was the opening game, and like these Michigan slappies say, well, it was the first game of the season. So if it was later
For
in
them
the
too.
season, it would have been better. Michigan would have beaten Notre Dame then. But on the road in South Bend, and it's a tough place to play no matter what time of season you play Notre Dame.
yeah. And
So-
Notre Dame was good.
So, Jason, is baseball the sport that you're most passionate about?
No.
What's the
no,
sport?
Football.
Football.
Yeah. Baseball growing up was my thing. I loved baseball growing up. Played baseball. Loved baseball. I mean, I loved Ernie Harwell. That was like one of the, I want to say the third when I started doing impressions, like I don't even know why I tried. I saw somebody do Harry Carey and it was really funny. I thought, God, that'd be funny to be able to do that. How do they
Can you do it? Can you do it? I want to hear if you can.
My first one was Harry Carey, and I just spent all day working on it. And I was like, I was bartending at the time, and I'm just mumbling all day to myself, going, and then finally, late in the afternoon, I just go, check out the guy with the sombrero. I'll tell you, Harry could make a heck of a nacho plate out of that. And some guy goes, wow, that's a good Harry Carey. I said, it is? It's good. Oh, man, thank you. So I did Harry Carey, and that was the only thing I could do forever. And then I thought, how do these guys do a bunch of voices? How do they do different voices? And I thought, who else could I do? And I watched something came on where the Final Four and these guys were trying to imitate Dick Vitale and they were terrible. And I went, well, I wonder if I could do Dick Vitale. I'm listening. And so I finally learned, which was you find that one key word or a couple keywords in phrases. And even if you don't sound like the guy, you can fool people into thinking, oh, yeah, he does say that. So quickly I was like, let me tell you something about Mr. Rizzo. The guy is super scintillating. And with some of these guys we better watch out for the Dukies because Michigan State's got the shooters that can flat out shoot the rock. And Diggle, listen to me right now. I'm going to tell you something. Headed to the Final Four, book Michigan State. March it on. And then that people would go, oh, that's good. And I'm like, all right, I'm getting there. And then somewhere along the line, somebody asked me, I think it was for my dad, and I was trying to do Ernie Harwell. And I heard an interview with, actually my best impression ever is the sports guy in Lansing. Nobody will know who this is. His name's Tim Stout, going to the Michigan Sports Hall of Fame. Shout out, Tim. Yep. But he talks like this, and he's a sports radio show. And he has Ernie Harwell. And I says, Ernie, now you did this for 30-some years. How were you able to do that? I mean, it's just incredible. Well, Tim, Lulu and I, we love baseball, and we'd get out to the ball game, and I like walking around and talking to the players and, and talk to Gibby and Tram and talk to Lou Whitaker about the game. And it's just the greatest game in the world. That's baseball, and then I'd try and morph it into a game call where he got him standing by the house on the side of the road and it's 2 down for the Orioles. And I just kind of worked it into that. And I thought that was okay in getting there. And Marv Albert and Mike Tyson and Ozzy Osbourne. I just kept everybody I would see on TV, presidents, and I would just try and do imitations of everybody.
So, Doc, Devin, Scillian's really good, well-versed, musically gifted, but this guy has the impersonations down pat of how many guys there.
Wow.
I mean, really impressive. Now, do people even know this about you, honestly?
Yeah. I did them. I did some once I started doing them in the newsroom. Our social media guy had me do them on Facebook early after I started, and we'd do 5 and see if you could get them, and then I'd start doing new ones. And there was one. What was the one? I think it was just I was rambling around going, Matt Stafford, this guy. Look at him, watch him throw that out there. That's an NFL quarterback there, man. He's gonna do this XYJ banana. Look at him, look upfield there. Boom, that's a quarterback right there, man. Look out. And he'd go, all right, do that. Nobody knows who Gruden is. And we'll do that and say, now the key to the second half is going to be whether they can run the football. Because if they can't run the football, well, they're just going to be out of, they've got to be able to pass as well, but it's got to be balanced. When I was at the Jets, Jets, we had to run the football. So, I mean, you just got to be good. And then here's a funny story that nobody is, I don't think Valeni knows this, but when he was in Lansing, he has this call-in, or he's doing a radio show, and he says, anybody who could give me the best Ken Cal in the next whatever gets 2 tickets to the Avalanche game coming up. And I was leaving work. I hear that. It takes me 8 minutes to get home. I got home, practiced it for 8 minutes, called him up, and I go, and we're back in overtime. Here we go, Ken. What's the key to the game here? Well, Ken, if we can put it in the goal, Ken, it'll count 1 and we'll get the win. Okay, here comes Stevie Yzerman behind the net. He passes it out in front.
That's good. Yeah. I wish I could do that too, man.
Did you win the tickets?
Stuff.
I did. I won it going away.
Nice.
The guy goes, he's even doing Paul Woods. I can't believe this.
So who's your favorite sports announcer of all time then?
Probably, I don't know, probably Ernie Harwell when I think about it. Who are your guys? Just throw some out
For
at me.
For me, I like Mike Breen a lot now. You know, some current guys like Mike Tirico. Oh, my God. So well-versed, huh? I mean, he calls hockey games now, too. Never even called hockey, calling hockey games and hockey playoff games.
He can do it all.
So really well-rounded he is. Yeah.
Not easy to impersonate, though.
Yeah, I don't know how you would impersonate him.
You can't do that one. I've always liked Gus Johnson. I always thought he's amazing.
Oh, the energy, my God. And went to U of D Jesuit as well, local guy, so that's really cool.
Yeah. It's a shame that guy never did a Final Four.
Madden Summerall, always the voices of football.
Right, for a long time. Yeah. And I love Marv Elbert now. Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth.
Dick
that's
Enberg.
A really good duo.
I was a big tennis guy.
I was a big Dick Enberg fan, yes. Dick Enberg was great. I loved him in football, too. And who? You just said Summerall, which I always thought was funny. It could be the biggest play in the world. And it's a touchdown, St. Louis. That's
we were kind of like slow to the draw, right? How about when Dick Enberg called the Tigers game? Do you remember that too?
Yeah, a couple years
summer
ago.
Or 2 summers ago. I think 2 summers ago now. So, Doc, really quick, you had brought up on Twitter, now I think this is true, about who would you most like to golf with of the 4 major Detroit pro sports teams. How about that for you? So from the Red Wings, Lions, and just one guy. Pick out one guy from those 4 Detroit pro sports teams.
One guy from all 4
that you would
teams.
most like to golf with. Yeah.
I think I'd say Stafford, probably for sure for the Lions.
He was the one that got the most votes, obviously.
See, I wonder why, because he can chug a beer. Did you see that too, by the way?
I did. That was
fantastic. Chugged a beer and did it better than Aaron Rodgers couldn't even do it.
That's the way you get fans back in your camp, right?
Yep, exactly.
Pistons, what do I want to play with?
Blake Griffin for me. I don't know. I mean, not that he missed. I mean, I would think of Blake because he's
Blake.
fun. I mean,
plus he's got to have Kardashian stories.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So let's see. Who am I? Tigers. You know, you'd think you'd say Cabrera, but no, I don't think so. You know, I interviewed this guy, and he was super nice, and I thought he would be. He's kind of magnetic, nice guy, and does a lot of good charity work. Matt Boyd.
We all love him.
Yep.
Yeah.
I've always said this, Mr. Nice Guy. He really is an extremely good dude.
Yeah, but actually, if I was truly picking a Tiger, it'd be Ron Gardenhire.
Okay, yeah.
That guy's hilarious.
He is entertaining too, big time.
Yeah, and
Red Wing,
Advocator, Michigan State guy.
No doubt about it. Now, obviously, we're all big Detroit sports fans. It's a little bit of a tough time right now. A lot of teams are in rebuild mode. I want to get your sense of this. Are you a tank guy? Are you a guy that says, look, if you're going to be a team that struggles, you know what? Just struggle at the best level. Try to get as many high draft picks as possible. Or do you say to yourself, you know what? If you're the Pistons and you're not willing to tank, then just wait it out and try to acquire as many good, talented individuals as possible. Because it seems like that's the biggest sports topic around town is. Obviously, a lot of the teams aren't doing well. They're not really on a championship level. But then the biggest debate that we're all having as fans is, okay, do you tank or do you not?
I know. It's
the biggest talking point, so where do you stand on it?
Well, here's where I stand on that, because I know it's going to come up in the debates. Let's use the Pistons. Good example. Finishing 8th. For what? Why? I mean, even if you finished 7th, you would have played Toronto. So, and people were saying, if you finish 7th, you've actually had some success against Toronto, but still, are they going to win? And even if they beat Toronto, how far are they going to go? I think they needed to find a way without tanking. It goes against my core beliefs to purposely lose. So I don't want any team to purposely do that. But if you want to trade away the assets for future assets, so the team is going to stink and you're going to get a better draft pick, then do it. I mean, why linger at 7 and 8 or out of the playoffs
forever?
Right. Yeah. And this was a good year to have a lottery pick, or it will. Yeah, obviously it would be, but instead, you linger and you hang in there. I know there's got to be a better way to do it to fall back in that regard. And in football, it's a little bit tougher, but I think there's a more of an art form to tanking in football. It should be pretty easy to do. But I think it goes against their core as well. No coaching staffs come and go so quickly, they can't afford to tank. That's the problem.
And we're living in a tumultuous time to be a Detroit sports fan, to say the least. Now, which team has the best shot of winning next? A championship of
Lions.
The four major teams, yeah?
It's gotta
now,
be
why
the
is
Lions.
that?
Just simply because I think you can turn your fortunes around more quickly in the NFL than you can in the other sports. And I just think you'd think the Pistons are closer as well if they get the right guy, but there's nobody in the draft that they're going to get, or nobody in free agency that is going to want to come there that's going to put them that far up. And you may be able to make the playoffs in the East, but are you really going to compete for a championship against whoever comes out of the West? That's what I look at there. In football, I always feel like it's a crapshoot. And like the Rams came out of nowhere. A lot of teams come out of nowhere, and after a couple good draft picks, and if the system catches on, hopefully these guys buy into what Matt Patricia's doing and it produces results. This is a big year, although I'm not sold on this year. I'm very, very worried for the Lions this year.
So do you believe in the Patriot way, by the way, which they're trying to replicate right now there in Detroit?
I say until proven otherwise, no, because no other Patriot castoff has done anything anywhere or has had success. Bill O'Brien's still around, but every other coach who's left to go somewhere else has failed. So by that rationale, the Patriot way doesn't work elsewhere. It works in New England, where you have the master and Tom Brady, which they go elsewhere. You don't have Tom Brady. So until somebody does it, you'd have to say it doesn't work.
Enjoying greatly the conversation that we've had with Jason Colthorp, WDIV. Now, let's get to know you on a quick hitter basis. Pepsi or Coke?
Coke.
American or Lafayette?
Lafayette.
Lafayette,
Yeah.
okay. Last movie that you saw in the movie theater?
Whatever my kids dragged me to. Well, I can tell you what my next one's going to be. It's going to be John Wick 3. Because which made me laugh because I saw you have the Kevin Nash belt on the wall. I know I just got into the John Wick series. My girlfriend and I watched the first one, and I went, "This is amazing. We got to watch the second one immediately." And I saw Kevin Nash was in, I think, the first one as a body man outside of some club or something. And I'm like, "Oh, Kevin Nash is in this. Oh, I hope he doesn't die." I don't think he did though.
One of your favorite songs in your MP3 player?
Tumbling Dice, Rolling Stones, playing it a lot lately. I don't know why.
Did you watch Game of Thrones, by the way?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so how was the series finale for you? Because it got a lot of reaction, a lot of traction on Twitter, and a lot of people were up in arms about the ending.
I don't get a lot of it. My initial reaction was, I like it, but I felt like they really screwed up in a lot of ways. My simple take on it is there were 6 episodes. They needed 10 more to fill in all these gaps, especially with the last episode. After John, there's so many things got left out, and I have no idea why. We're not going to see Sansa and Arya's reaction to John telling them that he's not their brother. Please. It's the bloodline of the show that he's a Targaryen. We should see it when he tells his family. And then in the last episode, John kills Dany. I want to see what happens next. You're telling me Grey Worm's not going to immediately try and kill him? That's not right. So then all of a sudden it goes to black. We're assuming this is like at least 3 weeks later because everybody comes to King's Landing. And there's this absurd round table where Tyrion's in chains 1 second and the next minute he's running stuff. He's running the whole show. Okay, here's who's going to be king. Whoa. A minute ago, Grey Worm wasn't going to let him speak. What's going on here? So it's just they needed so much more time to kind of flesh out these storylines, and I just think they wasted it. And I never read the books, so I'm tempted to think that when George Martin actually writes the last 2, I might actually read them just to get a little more fulfillment.
Now, my favorite guilty pleasure is I've watched every single episode of The Real Housewife that's ever aired. Me and my wife love it.
How sad is that,
That's
Jason?
my favorite guilty pleasure.
Sad, or is that all right? You let that slide by?
It's dramatic. And
I can let it go.
I'm entertained.
Okay.
Your favorite guilty pleasure that not many would know about you?
Guilty pleasure on TV or
Sure. On TV, something that you like to do, anything that's, that you'd say, oh my gosh, like I just did, and reveal it, and people go, oh my gosh, you're into that?
The one I don't want anyone to know about ever is that I have a lot of Celine Dion on my phone.
Man, Jason, 2 peas in a pod. If you look at here, I have a lot of music. The only album I have, Celine Dion.
I'll tell you, if
Her voice,
you asked
an
me
angel.
to, I would do this podcast
Yes.
again.
Look at that. Now, you know what's bad about you talking all about the Game of Thrones is that Doc and I each have never watched one episode.
No idea
Really?
what's
Oh, so
Totally
you-
over our
I
head.
wonder why
I'm
you were
so
looking
sorry.
at me.
I was like, I don't know what's going on, what you're talking about at all.
Exactly.
But at least you gave your opinion. Wanted to get that. And really quick, how about the best series finale that you've ever seen? Because a lot of
Breaking-
people have said Breaking.
Yeah, Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
I thought Breaking Bad was the best series I'd ever seen when I watched it. The finale was phenomenal. That series was just incredible. It got better every year. And that just seemed absurd to be able to, after season 3, and then you introduce, and then Gus become the whole Gus season in 4 and 5. That was just, I thought was amazing. The Wire was very good. I'm trying to watch Deadwood because I listened to some guy on another podcast who ranked his top 5 TV shows, and Deadwood was the only one I hadn't seen. And I was always like, I always wanted to get into that, and I've been trying. I'm only about 3 episodes in, and now they're doing a Deadwood movie, and I feel like I gotta hurry up through it. But so
Are you a big Netflix guy, by the
Yeah.
way? Binge watching?
yeah,
Shows too, and what are you binge watching then on Netflix?
I just binge watched Russian Doll, which is weird but good. I'll tell you what's really good that I just binge watched is Dead to Me. Is it Dead to Me?
I think
It's
so.
the one with Christina Applegate and
Okay.
Linda something. Anyway, her husband dies in a hit and run, and it goes from there. It's fantastic. It's quick, and every episode's like 30 minutes or less. So it was really good. And then this is an older one, but Godless with Jeff Daniels. Devin Scillian told me to watch that. That was fantastic. And another lesser known one, this is another Devin Scillian tip, Letterkenny. It's on Hulu. I think that one's on Hulu though. It's a Canadian, it's based on a town in Canada. It's pretty funny.
Have you guys seen Ozark, by the way? I've been watching
Yes.
that lately.
Oh, yeah.
Really good. Just
Love
in the
it.
first season, though. So,
Oh, you're not in season 2 yet?
No, I'm not even caught up officially yet.
So where are you at in season 1?
There are 3 or 4 episodes. I think
Oh,
there are
man.
4. So,
That's such a good show.
yeah.
Just hang on. Oh man, you're
You
not
see
to that
everything, too, man. I mean, they show a lot of stuff
Jason
there.
Bateman is so good in that. That is such a good show.
I love the fact when we do this podcast, we have interesting personalities here, and I'm so thankful. And I'm regretting that I didn't get Jason in here sooner. You got a great personality.
Thanks,
Thank you
man.
for sharing everything, and you're very friendly, and I've enjoyed our interaction. I look forward to talking sports with you again. I think that talking to you on the phone when big stuff happens is you have a unique perspective, and I can sense your passion about living, and you have a great personality to do the job that you're doing. So keep on. We appreciate you sharing insights with us. It means a lot for you to come here and share that with us. So I appreciate it.
Anytime. I can't wait to come back, guys.
Jason, thanks for all the time, and it's been a pleasure. We'll
Thanks,
talk to you
buddy.
again soon.
You guys have just downloaded the latest edition of Two Bad Hombres. You can follow the show at Two Bad Hombres. You can follow Jason at Jason Colthorp on Twitter. Check out all his great work at WDIV. Click on Detroit.com. All the great work there that they're doing. And thanks, everybody, for downloading the latest edition of Two Bad Hombres. We'll be back again next Saturday.